Disasters around the world are increasing in scale, frequency, and impact. Disasters such as earthquakes, famines, and cyclones have a significant impact on the world's economy and the global food system, affecting millions of people, particularly women, every year. Disaster risk reduction efforts are saving lives and reducing the death tolls. However, more people are being affected by these crises and economic losses are rising. Gender inequality means women bear the majority of the impact. In fact, women, alongside children, are 14 times more likely than men to die in a disaster. In 2008, Cyclone Nargis swept along the Burmese Peninsula, killing nearly 100,000, 77% being women. In 2004, up to 80% of those killed in the Indian Ocean tsunami were women. Women are also estimated to be 70% of those who have lost their lives to the deadly Ebola epidemic gripping West Africa. But why are women more vulnerable than men when a disaster strikes? Gender roles and inequalities, including women's lack of access to leadership and resources, are major drivers. Women's caring roles often put them at the front line of the response in supporting children, the sick, and the elderly. Yet too often they are excluded from disaster preparedness and response planning at community and national level. As the majority of the world's poor, women often lack access to vital services such as sanitation and healthcare, and the denial of land and property rights also leaves many women displaced post-disaster, facing heightened levels of gender-based violence and trafficking. This illustrates why disasters have a greater impact on women. This situation is magnified in South Asia, which is one of the least gender-equal regions on Earth according to the United Nations Gender Index. ActionAid, a global organization working to end poverty and inequality, joined with the Economist Intelligence Unit to document the role of women in preparing for and responding to disaster. Through the Women's Resilience Index, we looked at countries in South Asia to assess how they rank in withstanding and responding to disaster, as well as how well they recognize women's roles in building resilience. The index scores countries against economic, infrastructure, institutional, and social indicators, including measuring a country's availability of economic and employment resources, particularly for women. Whether each country has reliable infrastructure in place to ensure communities can remain connected and recover from disasters. The legal frameworks and capacity of public institutions to plan for and respond to disasters, including women's needs. The education, health, and mobility of populations, especially for women. What did we find? Women are often seen only as victims and are not afforded the same rights as men when it comes to emergencies. This includes not being able to participate in disaster risk reduction and resilience planning. Women face economic and socio barriers that aggravate existing vulnerabilities and further impact on their resilience in emergencies. There are significant gaps between the adoption of gender-sensitive policies and practice by governments. Many countries collect inadequate information that can support better planning, including gender disaggregated data. This needs to change. But how? It's time to empower women, economically and socially, to build their resilience to disasters and to recognize the value of women's roles in resilience and disaster risk reduction planning and activities. But for that to happen, more women need to be at the forefront as leaders. To ensure progress, we need to improve monitoring of gender-specific data and introduce accountability for gender-specific targets. Women should make up 30% of disaster risk reduction and planning committees to have critical mass. Finally, broader efforts on poverty reduction and sustainable development are essential in building women's resilience to disaster. But you knew that already, right? Women are at the front line of disaster response. Let's champion women as leaders. Find all the answers on how to achieve that at www.actionaid.org/womensresilience.